Well, today, June the 27th, I'm going to address the released report from the Director of National Intelligence, Unidentified Aerial Phenomena, a Preliminary Assessment. And I think that it's a 9-page executive summary, basically. Apparently, there's a much more detailed, involved classified report that will go to the appropriate committees of the Congress, Senate Intelligence, House Intelligence, I guess, and Armed Services Committees. So this unclassified summary kind of gives us a link into what we're doing, and I guess this is met with varying reactions. I think some disappointment in the UFO community, let's call them, and other people are probably going, see, well, there's not a whole lot here or something. But actually, there's quite a bit here, really. And I want to kind of go through a few things about it. First of all, the bulk of the cases that were studied, they talk about 144 cases that were studied. And these are largely cases, apparently all since 2004. So I guess the Nimitz incident is one of the cases, one would tend to think. But the bulk of them started after the Navy and then later the Air Force established a program for reporting these items. And the UAP task force notes that there's one of the biggest problems of collecting reliable data is the fact that there's a stigma attached to reporting these sorts of incidents. And so that has held back a lot of people to report incidents. Even as such, they still have got 144 cases that were studied. And here's what's really interesting is they're almost all from government or military sources. And so we don't have a lot of these, civilian cases, the moonshiner out there claiming he saw an alien or something. This sort of thing is not in this. These are high quality cases. And get this, 80 of the 144 have dual phenomenology sensors involved. Now, here's the point. It's often somebody shows you a picture and they say, well, it's some kind of an optical phenomenon, something about the camera, some trick photography thing. But if it also shows up on radar at the same time, that's a completely different thing than simply explained away with an optical case, right? Or if it was an IR sensor finds something, but the radar sees it also, or a human being gets an actual photographic picture, or whatever. In other words, multiple sensors enhance the confidence that this is something real. And the basic tone of the summary looks to me to say that, yes, these are real items. These are real objects. These are mostly. Then they kind of move away from it. Now, what I think we have to realize about this is that, this is not a Lou Elizondo report as he would write it. Even if he was still there and wrote the original report, when it gets staffed to the Director of National Intelligence and the staff work around there, where I think there's no inclination to talk extraterrestrial or anything like that, you're going to have a lot of editing. You're going to basically have things turned, softened, smoothed over, obfuscated. And so they look at the idea that the items were studied into 5 categories, which include airborne clutter, natural atmospheric phenomena, the U.S. government or industrial development programs, foreign adversary systems, and a great catch-all phrase called other. And of course, that's where the real action is in the other. Notice they didn't say extraterrestrial or otherworldly or anything like that. Other. See, again, what I'm saying, they're toning it down. However, the others are pretty provocative. Now, from what they're saying here. Now, so you have a list of really high-quality incidents compared to your typical UFO reporting to begin with. And they were only able to definitively explain away one of the 144 as some kind of a balloon or something. But, so you can see this is not Project Blue Book, which could explain away almost everything, like 95% plus of the cases, right? Here, they can only explain away one of them definitively. Now, I'd point out it's possible that in the classified report, they do try to give high probabilities to various events and fit them into those 5 categories. And maybe in that sense there could be some explanation, but they're not prepared to say it was definitive, and they're not telling us what that breakout would be. They do indicate 18 cases of the 144 that do fit into the other category. And that other category is things that are exhibiting unnatural emotion, acceleration, something that's floating in the air but moving against the wind, and things of that sort, like the ones in the 3 videos that we've seen. So I suppose the 3 videos those incidents would be some of those 18 incidents, one would think, and I guess there's 15 other incidents that we've not heard about yet. They're still being kept close to the vest. So I think this is, although it's being soft pedaled to the critical person looking at it. If you look at this like we're an attorney questioning a hostile witness, and we're getting these statements from the hostile witness under oath. You see what I'm getting? We're beginning. They're actually revealing a lot of things that previously they've not revealed. I mean, this is a big step ahead, actually. Now, I know that they didn't show us the alien bodies or the crash debris. I got you. The full-scale UFO person is not going to be happy with this yet. But I think, first of all, we don't know what the government really does have. That's another question. I mean, we have rumors and beliefs, maybe one way or the other, but we really don't know. And the fact they're releasing this much, they're admitting that these events are occurring, many of whom occurring in training areas that are in restricted airspace. And now, let's look at some of the possibilities. I also look at the 4 possibilities that are out there, other than the other category. And I look at this, if you're going to go out there and you're just going to be an analyst, you're saying, okay, what are the possibilities? And try to frame what the possibilities are. The first 4 possibilities are natural things. They're things that have been around in Blue Book and other previous studies. They're natural. There certainly are most of all the reports that are made by all people, most of the civilians, I think, a bulk of them probably are misidentifications of objects and of ordinary prosaic things. And, it's the idea of natural atmospheric phenomena, that was a classic during the Blue Book period, balloons, that's another classic. And then you have these other 2 categories, U.S. secret programs or foreign secret programs. Okay. And I would say about those, as you could throw them in, it's interesting. Early on, people were saying, well, no, you can kind of exclude that. We know that's not the case. It does say that of the 144 cases in their investigation, at the level of the Director of National Intelligence, with all the sensor fusion, intelligence fusion of all of our intelligence services that are reporting, they were unable to identify one case where that was it. So it's a possibility, but I mean, this possibility was also denied by General Sanford back in 1952 when they were talking about it then. And the idea that anything that was classified and relevant in 2004 would still be so classified today seems unlikely to me. I mean, if it was a real development program, would it have gone operational by now? I guess you could say it was a development program that was canceled and was a failure, but interesting failures, huh? So, and also the argument's been made by a lot of people, including pilots, that you wouldn't actually put our test programs in the middle of exercise areas like this without informing people that this was being done and to watch out. So, I think given the fact that I think the United States does have the most advanced aerospace technology in the world, it's very unlikely that any of these things are any known earthly power like Russia or China's foreign technology. That seems very unlikely, particularly those 18 cases, those unusual movement patterns. I don't think we or they have the ability to make craft that do things like in the video there. I mean, particularly the one, the famous Tic Tac video where it zooms right out of the shot queue so fast. That seems very unlikely. Now, so I think that the other is a real issue, and of course, what we have here is that the government has actually admitted that there are real objects, high probability real objects, moving around in restricted airspaces, and we don't know what they are except for one. 143 cases, we don't know. We also know that there's a lot of other cases that were unreported, and yet because people have stigma and so forth. And given that this report is definitely trying to downplay the idea of anything really exotic, I think this kind of lets us know that there really is some there. And going forward, one would hope that the intelligence committees would go forward and investigate this further. One thing I think might be helpful is that nothing before 2004 was included in this, and that reports outside of the government were pretty much not included either, which was also the case in AATIP as well, right? And so that's an area. What I think would also be interesting would be the question is, well, is there any other entity that didn't report? I mean, they do raise up an interesting possibility that it could be some industrial development program. Now that falls into some of the what you might call the conspiracy areas that somebody like Richard Dolan likes to deal with. The idea that there are corporate programs that are working with these technologies and they're somehow outside the normal review process of the government or something, Although, why would you put those into operational test areas where they would be detected? That doesn't make a lot of sense, really. And I don't think that theory is exactly correct. There is a possibility that there is some entity of the U.S. government, though, that isn't reporting. And this particular category sort of suggests that as a possibility. I mean, if there really is a UFO, what we want to call it, study and cover-up group that has existed since the late 40s, as many rumor people believe, right? That group is not mentioned here. So perhaps they didn't report. Maybe they don't report to the Director of National Intelligence. Maybe they're not an intelligence function. If you see what I'm saying, it's possible that something of this sort does exist. And of course, my suggestion isn't that they've actually developed or operating these vehicles. Far from it. But they could very well be in the other category, and this organization could know a lot more about it than anybody's telling us. They could even have definitive proof about what they are to some degree, and they're not sharing it. And perhaps could this be what's being alluded to here in a very subtle way? Okay, so I want to make a suggestion here that the committee might want to look at. There are public breadcrumbs, as people say, clues as to where you might look. And for instance, this whole thing about the investigation about the classified program of Not of This World, Admiral Wilson and Eric Davis. Admiral Wilson's still alive. Why didn't the committee subpoena him before? He was in intelligence. It seems to be in the intelligence community's jurisdiction. Why don't they subpoena him in executive session and ask him about the story that was being told here in this document that came out, that Richard Dolan has been promoting and so forth. I mean, he's not going to tell the press, and he's not going to tell me or you, but if he's called before a congressional committee and put under oath, I presume he will, in an executive classified session, I presume he will tell them, or else tell them at least he can't tell them because he's prohibited from doing so, and then maybe they can inquire as to what authority prohibits him, and we can subpoena that authority. So, in other words, my point is, following up on an investigation of this would be an interesting thing that could be done. I think that I think subpoenaing the members of the UAP task force and kind of basically fishing out to what degree they were inhibited from saying what they really believe, or do they really have the reservations that's listed in this report, and so forth. And there's probably some other, and of course, Elizondo, I think Louis Elizondo would be an excellent person to bring for the committee too to testify. And I think this approach, they might make some progress. But and then I think the final suggestion of putting more effort into monitoring these things and looking through all the recorded data on various sensor systems that we weren't looking for these kind of things, particularly the systems that NORAD has, I think would be very worth investigating to see what they find out. Because we have a lot of sensor systems that record a lot of data, and obviously we filter it down to the level that the user that's most useful to the user for national security purposes, right? You don't, extraneous things that really don't relate to any potential worldly threat aren't the normal things that they would be focused on, I would think. And so I think that would be interesting. There's another thing, this General McCaslin, who originally was talking to Tom DeLonge, and that head of the Skunk Works there, that Weiss, I think his name was, that from 3 or 4 positions ago. Why not subpoena him to ask him what he knows? In other words, a lot of these people can't talk publicly, but in a SCIF and executive session, I presume they could talk, or at least they could state that they can't talk and why they can't talk and what authority prevents them from talking. And then we can talk to that authority. So I think eventually we can hunt down who knows what. Because there is a real possibility, and it seems to be increasingly the case, that there's a lot of people in high positions that really don't have a firm grasp of everything the government knows or has historically known about the subject. Or at least that's a suspicion I have. And I think a lot of people do too. So at any rate, I'll kind of wrap this up, but I think that this report is actually a step ahead. It's food for thought, and it raises questions that will advance the discussion. I think that's the main point. So at any rate, I'll close this for now. If you like these videos, remember to subscribe and forward to people who are interested. And of course, you can also follow me on social media, which I'll list the links below in the comments. Thank you.